Hey guys, and welcome back to another video. Today, Blizzard released this 9.1.5 content update preview, and it kind of took the WoW community by storm. So I figured I'd make a video where I talk about it. You have probably seen pretty much every other WoW content creator make a video about this, so I understand if this is not something you want to see me talk about as well. But I might have a bit of a different perspective on things than some other people, so maybe you'll find it interesting. Either way, I figured I'd read through this article and give my thoughts on a couple things, and talk about things that I think are good changes, and maybe some things that I think are less than the best, or even things that I think are completely pointless. I don't know, we'll see. So, if you want to read this article yourself, I'll leave a link to it in the description, so feel free to go down and check that out. And then otherwise, if you have any feedback or anything, if you want to see more videos like this, if you want to see less videos like this, that kind of thing, feel free to leave a comment, like or dislike the video, either way. Subscribe, all that good jazz. So, let's just get right into it. Turns out that 9.1.5 is going to hit the PTR probably next week, sometime around Tuesday or Wednesday, if I had to guess. That's typically when they do PTR updates. In the past, when we were doing raid testing for 9.1, all of those came out on Wednesdays, so I would imagine that this 9.1.5 PTR build will probably be out on Wednesday. For anyone who doesn't know, you can get access to the PTR. I think if you just Google PTR Access WoW, you'll find probably a Battle.net, a Blizzard article that talks about how you can get access. You don't have to pay for it. It's just like any player can get access to the PTR, and it's something where you can go test this stuff. You know, you can report bugs, you can give feedback for ways to improve the game. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, you want to see this stuff early on, then that's something I would suggest. Otherwise, you can just wait till it hits live servers in a couple months from now, is what I'm guessing. Probably 2 or 3 months from now. Okay, so the first big thing are these Covenant updates. So there are a couple things in here. I won't read through it word by word, but basically, this first sentence, players who reach max renown for their Covenant will be able to freely switch among any of the 4 Covenants without cooldown or restriction. This includes cosmetic rewards. It means that, let's say you get the Night Fae mount on some character, and then you swap to Necrolord on that character, you can still use your Night Fae mount. But on top of that, it means that you can play Night Fae one day, swap to Necrolord the next day, it's swap back to Night Fae 3 hours later or whatever, right? So Covenant switching and the use of cosmetic rewards will also apply to any alt characters once your renown threshold is reached on one character. So basically what this is saying is, as 9.1.5 comes out, there's going to be some number of renown, maybe 70, maybe 80, something like that. And when you hit that number on your main character, on any character actually, then every other character will be able to swap between any of the 4 Covenants. So it's going to be an account-wide unlock. It's going to be super, super nice. And this is particularly nice for people who want to really min-max. So up until now, up until this announcement, people will say, what's the best Covenant? And the answer to that is really just whatever is the best Covenant for the most stuff at the time. So before this, when Covenants were a quote-unquote meaningful choice, where you couldn't swap very freely, you didn't have the choice, it was like a 2-week thing to come back to your Covenant. The quote-unquote best Covenant for any given class was just whatever Covenant performed the best on the most bosses in the raid. So for instance, as a Shadow Priest, let's say that Necrolord is very, very strong in single target, right? Which is the case currently. But compared to Night Fae especially, right? So Necrolord beats the next closest Covenant in single target by several hundred DPS, and that would be Night Fae. And then the other 2 are significantly below that. That's only in pure single target, though. So if you get any boss fight that's got multiple adds and things, the difference between Necrolord and Night Fae gets a lot lower, a lot smaller, I mean. And there are potentially certain fights, I'm thinking of things like maybe the 9, or let's see. Yeah, maybe the 9, maybe Kel'Thuzad even. There are certain fights like that where the difference between Necrolord and Night Fae is really, really small, and maybe even Night Fae pulls ahead in some certain situations. And with this change, you're going to be able to play Necrolord on the fights where Necrolord is best, and you're going to be able to play Night Fae on the fights where Night Fae is best. So this is super, super cool. It'll be really interesting to see how it's implemented, because it could be super annoying if it turns out that you have to like Hearth to Ouroboros every single time you want to swap covenants, which means that it's not going to be as easy to do in the middle of raid, right? So let's say you just killed the Eye and you want to swap before you go to the 9. You have to Hearth to Ouroboros, swap to the Night Fae or whatever, and then get a summon back to the 9. And then after you kill the 9, you go back to Ouroboros and swap to Necrolord again for whatever next boss you're doing. Situations like that would be really degenerate, and I would really dislike that. But if it's as simple as like you pop a tome and you change it like a talent, that would be super, super nice. It'd be really, really cool if you could just, swap as easily as that between the different covenants. And I think that this would open up people's eyes to playing covenants that are more off meta, right? So Kyrie Shadow Priest is something that has very rarely seen the light of day. People really, really dislike Kyrie Shadow Priest, not because it does bad damage, but mostly because, one, nobody plays it. Well, not nobody, but very few people play it. And two, the rotation is clunky and people don't like it because of that. But also because of that, because not many people have been playing it, there hasn't been a ton of, what's the word I'm looking for? A ton of optimization into the Kyrie Shadow Priest rotation. So perhaps when you can swap covenants as easily as this, those people at the high end who have already played Necrolord and Night Fae to their fullest and are bored with those will be like, hey, I've got, 500 tomes. I don't mind dropping one to swap to Kyrian real quick and playing some keys as a Kyrian Shadow Priest and then swapping back when I have to, right? So I could easily see those off meta covenants, and not just for Shadow Priest. I mean for every class. I could see off meta covenants seeing more light of day, right? I think this could be a really, really good change. It'd be really interesting. It'd be really nice. Let's say you just go to Ouroboros. You're like, I just finished raid. I want to do some PvP with my homies. You swap Ventir real quick. Boom, you're ready to go for PvP. It'd be super, super nice. So I really think that this is an awesome change. And I didn't mention this very much, but the fact that you can unlock it on one character and it unlocks it for your entire account for all your alts is like so, so, so nice. You would not believe how many hours I've spent doing campaigns on alts that I just want to pull my hair out. I'm, binge watching Netflix on my other monitor as I mindlessly click accept, go kill 10 things, and click turn in, So being able to skip all that would be super, super nice. Now, I will also mention, if that kind of gameplay is what you're into, you don't have to do this. So just because you are able to skip the campaign or able to freely swap between covenants doesn't mean that they're going to take it away from the game. They're not going to completely remove the campaign so that you can't do it. If you do like doing covenant campaigns and keeping up with the story and the lore between all the covenants and everything, that's still something you'll be able to do. But for those of us who dread questing, this is a really, really nice change that I really like. So then this next thing, conduit energy is being removed. Hallelujah. And conduits will be freely swappable without any restrictions. So honestly, this is one thing where I've seen a ton of people complaining about it, but I happen to be in the lucky few who this doesn't really affect me. Shadow Priests don't really change our conduits very often. Typically, you have, like, if you're Night Fae, you run Dreamweaver for Raid, and you have all your conduits in there, and you run Karain for Mythic Plus, or you still run Dreamweaver for Mythic Plus, but all of the conduits are the same. So you never really worry about conduit energy. And if you're Necrolord, the same thing is true with Bonesmith for Mythic Plus and Plague Deviser for Raid, that kind of thing. So I haven't ever really had a problem with this conduit energy thing, especially on my Priest. But I know that, like, Warlocks, for example, really hate conduit energy. THD has been pushing for the removal of conduit energy since, like, the alpha of 9.1 or of Shadowlands since like conduit energy was even a thing. So I think this is a really good change, and just because it doesn't affect me doesn't mean it's not a problem, right? Conduit energy, why was it ever in the game? It's part of their quote unquote meaningful choice agenda, where they want you to have to make decisions that are meaningful, and I just think this was arbitrarily restricting, and I really am glad that they're getting rid of it. So good change in my opinion. Oh, and then this is what I was talking about. Completing a Covenant campaign on one character will allow alternate characters the ability to skip that same Covenant's campaign, earning the renown and a third Soulbind unlock immediately without needing to replay the full narrative arc. So this is what I was talking about before, where alt characters are going to be able to skip those Covenant campaigns as long as you finish them on your main already. And what I will mention before I get past this is if you're playing your main, right, as soon as you get to the point where 9.1 is getting close, so let's say in a month or two, you finish Prague, you've got like your raid logging basically at this point. What would be really nice to do is finish the Covenant campaigns for other Covenants. Maybe not right now while the Covenant swapping is still so hard, but as soon as 9.1.5 drops, what I'll probably end up doing is I'll play my regular Covenant for the content that I want to do, and then whenever I'm about to do like the Shaping Fate weekly and the Collecting Anima weekly and the World Boss, stuff like that gives renown right now, I'll swap to a Covenant that, probably Kyrian, a Covenant that I haven't finished. I'll do those weekly things as Kyrian so that I get the renown for it, and then I'll just swap back afterward, and I'll slowly finish that renown grind as a Kyrian Shadow Priest. And I'll also do the same thing where I finish that Covenant campaign just so that I can have it accessible on other characters. So, long story short, this Covenant updates section is basically saying, it's Blizzard saying, hey, remember how we promised that Shadowlands would be super alt-friendly? Well, now it's going to be at least a lot more alt-friendly. So, all of the things in here, super, super awesome. Really, really glad to see it. And these are things that impact me specifically a lot, and I think that a lot of people are really going to like these changes. Okay, next we have some new character customizations. I won't go too much into this because, honestly, I don't really care what my character looks like, right? But this is cool to see for the people who do care. There are some new character customizations for Nightborn, Lightforged Draenei, and along with additional updates to ear size options for Void Elves, new travel forms for Druids, and new soul shapes for Night Fae. I know a lot of people really love the Night Fae soul shapes. Like there's the Hippo Gang, the Spider Gang, all that stuff. I'm a default Fox Gang member myself, so I really don't care about soul shapes. But for those of you who do, these are some sweet new customization options. I mean, pretty cool. So if this is the kind of thing you like, then this is good news for you. So like I said, if you want to read more about this stuff or go in depth, there's a link in the description to this article. The next thing, this one was pretty interesting, intrigued me, and I'm not sure how I feel about it. They say introducing Legion Time Walking. So you can delve back into Legion dungeons with Legion Time Walking and take on the challenges within, including access to Legion Mythic Plus dungeons. So this is pretty interesting. This next sentence. This event will run for 2 weeks the first time it runs within the game, and then will resume a regular 1-week schedule for subsequent bonus events. Okay, so Dratnos put out a video a couple days ago where he talked about some things that he would like to see in 9.1.5 that would bring some life back into the game. And in that video, he talked about this specifically. Not this exact implementation of it, but he talked about how it'd be really cool if, every season or something, they brought back 2 or 3 old dungeons and put them in the mix. So right now, if I alt-tab over to World of Warcraft, if we look, we've got 8, 9 as soon as Tazavesh comes out, but we have 8 Mythic Plus dungeons currently in Shadowlands, and that number is down from BFA. In BFA we had, let's see, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12 if you include Upper and Lower Mechagon, right? Junkyard and the other one that I can't remember. But so like 12 dungeons, we're down to 8 from 12, and in Legion we also had 12, or technically 13 if you include Karazhan, however you split up Karazhan. So we don't have very many dungeons currently, and there were more in the past that were designed around Mythic Plus. So in Legion was the first expansion where Mythic Plus was a thing. So all of these dungeons were designed with Mythic Plus in mind. Same with BFA. All of these dungeons, as many of us can attest to, were designed with Mythic Plus in mind. Thousands and thousands of Mythic Plus runs have happened in these dungeons. And now, in Shadowlands, all of this stuff in BFA and all of this stuff in Legion is pretty much lost to the wayside, right? Nobody ever runs any of these dungeons because they're not in the rotation anymore, right? So it'd be really cool to see in Shadowlands, this is what Dratnos was suggesting, maybe every season they bring back 1 or 2. So let's say the first season they bring back Freehold, and maybe they bring back the Motherlode, right? So on top of all 8 of these dungeons, including number 9 Tazavesh, as soon as that becomes Mythic Plus, which will be a while, I think, 9.2 maybe. Once all of it'd be really cool to have all 8 of these and 2 more, the Motherlode and Freehold, 2 that people really, really liked from BFA. And then maybe the next time they bring back Maw of Souls and Halls of Valor. People loved Halls of Valor. And, I mean, me in particular, this was like my favorite dungeon in Legion. I ran it like crazy, and now I never get the chance, right? This is some content that I would love to revisit in a meaningful way, right? In a Mythic Plus, run it with my friends and its current content. And it's hard. I think that'd be really, really sweet. And in response, kind of, I don't know if this was directly in response to Dratnos' video, but what they plan on doing is something similar to that. But it's a little bit different. So they, as far as I can tell, they don't plan on bringing back like 1 or 2 dungeons for the course of a season. What it looks like they want to do is, as regular time walking is going on, right? We currently have like Cataclysm time walking, and then Mists of Pandaria time walking, and then the next week you get Burning Crusade time walking, that kind of thing. They'll just add Legion into the mix. So 1 week it'll be Cataclysm, the next week it'll be Legion. And whenever Legion comes around, you'll get a week of Legion Mythic Plus. So I'm not entirely sure what the plan is here. Do they plan on like having... Is this going to affect your Mythic Plus score for the current season, right? If you get... if you go and do this Legion Mythic Plus for that week, and you get like, plus 20s in every key timed, is that going to bump up your score for current Shadowlands? And so that you get invited to more Sanguine Depths and more Plague Falls or whatever of the current dungeons? Or is it going to be a completely separate scoring system? Or will it even have a score at all? And then the other thing that I want to know, Kalamazi mentioned this in his video that he just put out about this. Will the loot from these dungeons be high enough eye level to matter, right? So there are some sweet trinkets and things specifically that dropped from Legion Mythic Plus that could be really impactful in Shadowlands. And depending on how they decide to handle loot with this, like if you do a 15 Halls of Valor, let's say, when Legion Mythic Plus is out, 1, will the end of dungeon boxes drop loot? And if so, what item level will that loot be? Will it be 236 like a regular 15 would be currently? Because if so, that's insane. I mean, that's going to throw so many more trinkets into the mix and make it so that people might have to, wait for these Legion Mythic Plus weeks, and then absolutely spam the crap out of their dungeons of choice. And then if you don't get the trinket in time, you have to wait another 2.5 months or whatever it is. So I could see this being a really bad thing. But it would be pretty interesting, at least, if like your weekly cache could drop Legion Mythic Plus loot, after the week that you do it, right? That would be pretty cool. But again, I worry that there's going to be a trinket from a specific Legion dungeon that you can only get while Legion Mythic Plus is active, and people are going to get it the first week and absolutely destroy all the meters, and everyone's going to set crazy parses. And those of us who don't go and do that, or get unlucky and don't end up getting the drop, are going to be left behind, right? And then you're going to have to wait another 2.5 months for it to come back up in the rotation before you can finally get your trinket. To me, this is similar to like the Divine Instructor's Bell or Instructor's Divine Bell or whatever it's called that Balance Druids use. That thing drops from a world quest currently, and the world quest is just randomly up sometimes, and it's not up for like weeks at a time. So I'm currently working on gearing a Balance Druid, and I've just been waiting for that world quest to come up so that I can have that trinket, which would be like a pretty huge DPS upgrade, and it just doesn't pop up, so I just can't have it. I could see a similar kind of thing happening with this Legion time walking. So I worry about it a little, but I am super excited to go back and do a lot of those Legion Mythic Plus dungeons, because that's really when I got my start in the game. 7.2 is when I really started playing the game, and Legion Mythic Plus was like a huge part of me wanting to get better. So I'm super excited mostly for nostalgia reasons to do Legion time walking, and I think it's a good change that people will enjoy, although I do worry about some caveats. Next thing, the Maw introduction will be skippable, so players who have completed the introduction in the Maw on one character will be able to speak to High Lord Darian Morgraine in capital cities to skip it on their alt characters on their account. This is something that people have advocated for a long time. It's not a huge problem for me, at least currently, because it takes like half an hour if you're doing it on a pretty quickly. You don't have if you're like not listening to every cutscene and you're not paying attention to RP and stuff, you can do this pretty quick. So it's not that big of a deal in my opinion. But it's nice that they're looking for ways to ease the new player experience and the alt experience. Anything that I can do, anything that I can skip on my alts, I'm all for. So I think this is a good change, although I just didn't feel like it was super necessary. This next one, Island Expeditions. You can queue solo or with a party. This is not a huge change for me, but it could be a huge change. I mean, it will be a huge change for those people who like to collect things. There are a ton of things on Island Expeditions, mounts, pets, things like that you can get from Island Expeditions that currently take forever. So if you're trying to get any amount of doubloons to buy a new mount, or if you're trying to do like certain achievements on the Island Expeditions, as of making this video, you have to wait in queue for like half an hour, or more to finally get into a group where you can do these Island Expeditions. But in the future, in 9.1.5, they're going to let you queue by yourself, which means you can just go in solo and do it by yourself. And that's going to mean that those people who weren't around to do Island Expeditions in BFA when they were current and are therefore behind in their collections and everything are going to have the chance to catch up, right? So I think this is a super cool change. I actually did go back to do a couple Island Expeditions maybe a month and a half ago, something like that, when I wanted to see what kind of mounts I could get from this. And I just immediately stopped because I was like, yeah, I'm not going to waste an hour and a half waiting for a queue to do something that's going to give me 20 doubloons when the next mount I need to buy is 7,000 doubloons away, right? So the fact that you can queue this solo is going to be super nice, and will bring this back into content that people are actually doing. Next, this is an X.1.5 change that happens every time there's a patch like this. Talent and ability improvements. Basically, they're just trying to balance things more. In 9.1.5, we are working on additional updates to a variety of class talents and class abilities, including conduits, rune carving, and covenant class ability tuning. So this will be interesting. I'm not entirely sure, what kind of things they're going to change here. I was talking to my guild a little bit earlier, and they were, trying to figure out like what classes might need to be buffed, what classes might need to be nerfed, kind of thing. And as far as Shadow Priest goes, I would like to see them change things like Psychic Link. Pretty much no one ever uses that talent. Actually, let's go look at our talents real quick, and I'll talk about things that they could change. Yeah, so Psychic Link, pretty much never use this in PvE at least. I'm not sure if this is a PvP thing, but I imagine it's not. It'd be cool if they changed, let's see, what else? Mind Bomb doesn't get much use. Surrender to Madness. It'd be really cool if they made this like deal more damage, or gives you 200% more insanity, something like that, because people rarely run this as well. What'd be really, really cool is if they made Misery baseline, get rid of this talent, add a different talent here, and then you can run Twist of Fate and have Misery at the same time. Or make Searing Nightmare baseline so that we have an actual AoE spell, and then put a new talent here. That kind of thing would be really cool. Outside of that, though, yeah, I don't know if there are many other... Maybe Damnation, maybe change that a little bit. I don't know what else you could change about this, though, that would make it playable in, like, Raid and Mythic Plus. But this is one that people use in PvP, I'm pretty sure, so maybe it doesn't need that much changing. But yeah, basically, they're going to change a bunch of stuff. A bunch of talents, class abilities, that kind of thing. It's nice to see that they're trying to actively balance the game, but knowing Blizzard, they're going to miss a Fire Mage ability, and then Fire Mage is going to do 5 billion damage in Mythic Plus, or they're going to not fix a bug with Windwalkers, and Windwalkers are going to be the only class that gets brought to Mythic Plus, that kind of thing. So I'm glad to see this, and I hope they do well, but I don't really have my hopes up that high. Next, the Allied Race unlocks. There are specific Allied races that had dungeon requirements to unlock that will no longer have that requirement. That's nice for people who are looking to get Allied races. This is something that I've never dealt with, so it's not going to affect me at all. This one's a cool one. They're going to add additional travel points in the Maw. So with 9.1 and Korthia, you can now fly from Korthia to Venari's Refuge. There's flight paths, and they're going to add a couple more flight paths. So there's going to be one in Perdition Hold, one in Desmoderon, and you're going to be able to fly between those. And a important thing to note is Desmoderon has the raid in it. So as of making this video, getting to the raid is a pain in the butt. Anybody who has tried to get to the raid can tell you the easiest way to get to the raid is like you run way out in the middle of nowhere, way on top of the tallest spire you can get to, and you goblin glider across, and then you die and you res at the graveyard right next to the raid. That's like the easiest way to get there, and pretty much nobody knows how to do it. So the normal way to get there is you run through 1 million elite mobs and they nearly kill you on your way. If you're lucky, you run behind some other idiot who gets killed on the way, and then you manage to get there, right? So this change is going to be so nice. You just, go to the flight path, you click on it, and boom, you're at the raid. Especially for players who are not geared, like a brand new alt, for instance. So very, very good change. I don't really care about the Perdition Hold thing. I don't know if anything's going on in there except for like Covenant Assaults these days. The Venthyr Assault, I think, happens there, but that's not really going to matter too much. There's going to be remote anima turn-ins. So if you complete quests from Archivist Roe Sweer, however you say that, Sweer, I don't know. Completing quests from that dude will provide access to an anima diverter within Korthia, where anima can be directly deposited. So this means that instead of having, let's say your Korthia is like a huge anima farm these days. In 9.0, anima was pretty hard to come by. In 9.1, it is far from hard to come by. You just get anima passively as you're hanging out in Korthia, which means that for now we have to do 1 million different rares in Korthia. You get 1 billion different items in your bags, and then you have no way to get rid of them unless you hearth to your Covenant Hall, and then there you can deposit your anima. In 9.1.5, you're going to be able to go back to... You're going to be able to stay in Korthia and just deposit your anima remotely. So this is a really nice change. Just a quality of life thing, really. Because it's not going to make anybody stronger or anything. It just means that you don't have to hearth every half an hour to turn in anima when you're hanging out in Korthia. So for people, especially for people who are behind on the Archivist Codex rep and trying to get conduits still and conduit upgrades and sockets, this will be a nice change of pace for you guys. Transmogrification Linking. So this is something that again, doesn't affect me very much, but I'm sure will affect a decent amount of the player base. You can show off your complete transmog outfit to chat or online by easily sharing a link to it from the dressing room. So I imagine this is going to be very similar to map pins, where you can shift click on a map pin and it'll put a link to it in chat. I'm pretty sure this is going to be very similar. You save a transmog outfit and then you shift click on it and it puts it in chat and people can click on it and see what it looks like. You'll also be able to mouse over the items to see how they can be collected. This will be really nice. What I think would be really cool is if they let you inspect other players and you could mouse over their transmog items and it would tell you how they got them so that they don't have to share a link. That'd be really cool. It'll also tell you if you've already collected the appearance or if it's an appearance that is accessible to the character viewing it. So this is pretty interesting. And this is a really, really big deal for people who do transmog. I know that there are people out there who love this part of the game. And that's not really me. I don't really care about transmog too much. I mean, I put on my my Servant of Nazoth outfit and I'm good, right? But there are people out there who get really, really into this kind of thing. So having this sounds like a really, really good change for them. Pretty exciting. There's some alt leveling improvements. This is something I'm interested in because I'm going to be playing a lot of alts in the future. There are going to be a variety of improvements in support of a smoother experience leveling alt characters through Shadowlands, such as an additional rank of heirloom upgrades, and improvements to Threads of Fate, such as the addition of Torghast as an option, and renown gains for completing bonus objectives. So this is like super, super cool. People have been advocating for Torghast leveling since as long as Torghast has been in the game. So it's really nice to see that, like they said, they're listening to player feedback and trying to make things smoother. Personally, the additional rank of heirlooms just means I'm going to have to spend more gold, so I don't really mind that. But the Torghast leveling is going to be pretty sweet. And the renown gains from bonus objectives, I mean, I don't really do these anyway, but maybe with renown tied to them I will. I don't know, we'll see. PvP gear power adjustments. Lower item level PvP gear will now scale to a higher item level in PvP situations than before. This is basically so that people who are late starters to the season aren't so behind. So right now, if you're starting out in PvP, let's say you're bad at PvP, and you know you're bad, right? And you're starting out and you're trying to get good. The problem is, when you get paired against people who are better than you, not only are they just better mechanically and like know more stuff and are going to be able to beat you that way, but also their gear is better than you. So strictly mathematically speaking, you have to play, 20%, 30% better than them to make up the gear difference. And when you're already worse than them, you're at a pretty big disadvantage, right? So what this is saying is that they're going to try and reduce that power gap so that new characters can feel like they're able to compete in battlegrounds and arenas more readily. This is an amazing change, in my opinion. PvP is awful when you're like barely 1400, so your item level is really low, you don't have very much verse, and you're going against people who are 2100 who just absolutely blast you. They're already better than you mechanically, and now they've got like 5 times better gear. And so you're just like, why am I even doing this? I get nothing out of this. They just stomp me every time. So this is a really, really good change. Glad to see it. I probably still won't PvP unless it gives me good gear for PvE, but hopefully it doesn't, so I don't have to do it. But yeah, this is a really good change. Rune carving recipes. This one's interesting. Drop rates for rune carving recipes will be increased to 100% drop rate in any dungeon difficulty. The wording here makes me a little sad because I was hoping that they would include this for raids. Because Fire Mage in specifically, I'm working on gearing up a Fire Mage as well right now, and there's a rune carving recipe for Fire Mages that drops from Sun King's Salvation in Nathria, and the other day when I went to try and get it, the queue for that in LFR is like, I don't know, 45 minutes, an hour, hour and a half, something like that, and I just wasn't willing to wait that long. So I'm not sure if currently the rune carving recipes from raids are at 100%. If they are already, then that's cool. But if they're not, and they're making it 100% for dungeons, I feel like they should just include raids as well. Especially old raids. I don't mind if the new raids, at least current raids, where people are actually doing them and you can queue into LFR relatively quickly, I don't mind if those aren't 100% drop rate. But the ones where it's like, I'm going to wait an hour and a half to go kill a boss that won't drop the recipe for me 6 times in a row, I wish those would be 100% drop rate for sure. So if they already are, I'm not positive. But if they already are, great. If they're not, please add that to this. But getting 100% drop rate from dungeons, that's super sweet. It's really, really, really good that they're not... Because in the past, it was like, if you do a normal dungeon, you're less likely to get it than if you do a mythic dungeon. And that just meant that people who are worse at the game get punished. And I feel like that's not a great ethic for the game. I don't feel like you should be punished just because you're not as good as somebody else. I feel like if you... I do think that there are, like... you should get lower item level stuff and things like that if you can't do... Like, there should be a progression through difficulty. So harder stuff should give you better reward, that kind of thing, because it motivates people to get better at the game and spend more time playing the game. But I do think that there's a level between, like, normal and mythic dungeon, a mythic 0 and a normal dungeon. People who can't do a mythic 0, and so they're stuck doing normal or heroic, those people shouldn't be punished. Because that's like such a low end of the player base that the difference between doing normal and mythic 0 is like still really, really small. You know, there's like not a huge difference. So I feel like those people should not be punished is what I'm trying to say. And then this last one doesn't really matter. Battle for Azeroth Legacy Loot Rules. Legacy Loot Rules will be enabled for players at level 60 in all Battle for Azeroth raids and dungeons, causing encounters to drop the number of items as they would randomly drop for a 5-player dungeon party or a 20-player raid. Not entirely sure what the deal with this is. I think it's mostly like if you go to Battle for Azeroth and you solo a dungeon currently, you'll only get 1 piece of loot. But in the future, it's going to be just like if you were doing old content like Cataclysm and stuff, where if you do a 5-player dungeon, you'll get 3 pieces or whatever. And if you do a 20-player raid, you'll get 5 pieces or whatever the actual number is. So good change, but also not something that doesn't really affect me. So that's it for these. Keep an eye on the official World of Warcraft site for the complete 9.1.5 content update notes and more over the span of development. Like they're saying, I will be keeping an eye on that stuff. So if you'd rather not go through and read all these articles, then feel free to subscribe, and I'll make videos in the future as stuff becomes more figured out or whatever, and I'll give you my thoughts. So if you liked the video, make sure you click the like button. If you really liked it, feel free to subscribe. Thank you for everybody who stuck around, and as always, leave some feedback. If you like this kind of video, I'd love to know, because I don't mind making videos like this, and they're pretty easy because I can just read and give my thoughts, right? And it's not super time consuming. So yeah, please leave some feedback if you liked it or disliked it. I really would like to know either way, so don't feel like you're being too harsh or anything. And then feel free to join my Discord server. There's a link in the description. And last thing, if you want to read this article, I'll also have a link for that in the description below. But anyways, that's going to be it for me. So I will catch you guys in the next video. Peace.